Okay. Good afternoon, and thank you for being here today for us to confront a tragic injustice that has deeply affected our community. The heartbreaking story of Preston Lord and the actions of the individuals responsible is a stark reminder of the need to strengthen our laws to protect public safety and ensure accountability. I want to begin by acknowledging some very important guests with us today. First, I'd like to recognize Nick Lord and Autumn Curiel, the parents of Preston Lord. Your strength and determination to seek justice in the face of such loss inspires all of us. Thank you for being here today. I also want to thank Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell for joining us. Her dedication and invaluable partnership in pursuing justice and strengthening public safety have been essential to this effort. Today, along with my colleagues here, I'm proud to introduce Preston's Law, House Bill 2611. This legislation is a direct response to the horrific events that devastated the Lord family and our community. It aims to hold offenders accountable while sending a strong message that these acts will not be tolerated. The bill targets the growing problem of organized violence and criminal activity in our neighborhoods. It strengthens penalties for those who act with accomplices to commit assault, provides law enforcement with better tools to investigate and prosecute these crimes, and supports efforts to prevent future incidents. The goal is straightforward: to ensure accountability for those who cause harm and to deter others from following the same path. Preston's Law will help us protect our communities and give law enforcement the resources they need to pursue justice effectively. I also want to highlight another important bill deserving attention, House Bill 2653, which is sponsored by my colleague, Representative Jeff Winninger. This legislation addresses a critical issue that arose during the investigation, where some of the teens who cooperated with law enforcement in Preston's case were bullied and threatened for speaking with police. House Bill 2653 would allow law enforcement to keep witnesses' names confidential, protecting their safety and encouraging others to come forward without fear of retaliation. So I'd now like to turn it over to County Attorney Rachel Mitchell, who will share more about how these bills will support prosecution efforts and its broader impact on public safety.
Thank you, Representative Gress, Nick Lord, and Melissa Autumn Curiel for being here today. Last year, in addition to preparing this case related to Preston's death, my office also received additional cases involving individuals who would gang up against one individual, oftentimes all teenagers, and conduct attacks on these individuals. As we moved through looking at these cases, it became clear that our current law was not doing the job that we needed it to do. Because these attacks did not oftentimes involve weapons, they didn't involve serious physical injury in some of the cases, they did not involve even substantial physical injury under the law, which oftentimes includes broken bones. These attacks would be classified as misdemeanors. It was only through arguing that the victim's ability to resist was impaired that we could even get it to a Class 6 felony, the lowest level of felony. Preston's Law will change all of this. Under Preston's Law, the swarming component is focused on those who gang up on an individual. This is, for the most part, what we have seen arise in in teen violence. 3, 4, 5 individuals ganging up on one person. And I would also point out that this applies to more than juveniles, it applies to adults as well. As a prosecutor, I can tell you that the mob and group-like mentality is significantly more dangerous for the victim, and that's why this needs to be reflected in the law. The proposed legislation adds language to the current law that if you commit an assault and are aided by 2 or more accomplices, the charge will be a Class 4 felony. This is significant for 2 reasons. First of all, a Class 4 felony carries a longer punishment than a Class 6 felony. But also important is the fact that a Class 4 felony, unlike a Class 6 felony, cannot be returned to a misdemeanor. Those are the issues that we have had with the current law. So working with Representative Matt Gress, Julie Willoughby, and others within the legislature, I see Representative Carter here as well, supporting this legislation is critical. And I would also thank Representative Wenninger for his bill. We also saw instances of bullying of witnesses in this situation, and so addressing that through his legislation is going to be very, very important. I would do anything I could to change what happened to Preston Lord, but as the top prosecutor, I can't do that. I can't restore him. But what I can do is I can make sure that we have tools going forward to dissuade people from doing this kind of thing again and causing the kind of hurt that has hit Preston Lord's parents. So my sincerest thank you to the Lord family for taking the time to come out here and honestly live through this again to support this bill. It means so much, and it is such a great way to make a difference. Thank you.
Thank you, County Attorney Mitchell. And now the family of Preston Lord would like to make a statement. And we will have Autumn Curiel come up and share a few remarks.
Hello, I'm Preston's mom. Preston was a happy, thriving, ambitious teenager with his whole life ahead of him. He is what we are most proud of in this life. Had our son had the opportunity to defend himself when he was violently assaulted, he could have lived out all of his hopes and dreams. Instead, he tragically suffered a brutal attack by a group of people where he was restrained, leaving him the inability to fight back. It is still deeply shocking to think that such a cruel and senseless act was inflicted upon our beloved son. We hope stronger laws can prevent any future devastating acts from occurring, ensuring no one else is robbed of their life, potential, and vitality. Thank you.
Thank you, Autumn. And I just want to add that it is an honor and a privilege for the state of Arizona to have this legislation named after your son. And we look forward to it passing through both houses and getting signed by the governor as promptly as possible. Thank you. Now, County Attorney Mitchell and I are available for questions. If you have any questions that you'd like. Dennis.
You talk a lot, it's named after Preston Lord, but there's only really one line in that legislation that deals with that type of assault. They didn't address the other pieces of the bill, which deal with assaulting police officers, bus drivers, trains, and whatnot. How are those connected to this tragic death?
Well, and County Attorney Mitchell might be able to address it. There are several bills that we're moving in order not to violate the single subject rule that all impact what happened in Preston Lord's situation. And we do have laws on the books right now that elevate the criminal punishment for assaulting certain populations, including police. But County Attorney Mitchell, I don't know if you'd like to add any more.
Sure. Dennis, here's what happened. There was an aggravated assault bill that was put on the ballot. under an old version of the aggravated assault statute. In the meantime, while that was moved to the ballot, there were additional things added to the aggravated assault statute. So these have all been passed. What it is an attempt to consolidate it, and it looks like it's repassing it, but it's to consolidate it into a single cohesive statute. So it's really a fix. It's not really an addition. This is Preston Lord's bill to add that one portion.
Now I understand your question.
Yeah.
Part of this was a ledge council drafting decision. If we had just included the language pertaining to the swarming legislation, the code that it was going into amending would sunset in 2033. We want this to be permanent, and this was the proposal that ledge council suggested in order to harmonize all three versions of the statute and make all of them permanent law.
What are some of the penalties of those punitive law that would be applied to this? What is it like in this and look like under the bill?
So right now, my understanding is that it's a Class 6 felony for aggravated assault. And when you engage in swarming activities, it will now be elevated to a Class 4 felony. When someone faces a Class 6 felony, it can be pled down to a misdemeanor. Swarming is a completely different type of violence happening right now. It certainly frightens the individual subject to swarming. It has the potential to cause significant injury, and in Preston Lord's case, it caused death. So we're taking this very seriously, and law enforcement needs additional tools to hold these perpetrators who cowardly engage in mob violence accountable.
This sounds like a very unique category, something that we don't have in law right now. The act of swarming and establishing as a specific law.
That's correct. Yep. Wayne.
I believe Gilbert Police, as we were discussing this case and the Gilbert Booth cases, discussed how difficult it was to classify this student group as a criminal gang because of different thresholds they have to reach. Is there any of this legislation, is there anything to address that, to, I guess, bring groups like this into the fold?
County Attorney Mitchell.
This current statute does not address that. There still is a process for finding this to be a gang, but again, as I've talked about in my previous press conferences about this, in order to allege something against them in a particular case, you have to have a grand jury also agree with that, and the grand jury did have a full presentation of that in this matter.
In my understanding too, is some of the criticism in this case was the police handling of the situation where this group was going around for a year attacking people. They didn't do much. Does this legislation do anything to address that situation so police can be more proactive to stop this kind of senseless violence?
Well, I think we want all of our law enforcement agencies to be responsive to crimes happening in our community. In general, I mean, we have a shortage of law enforcement officers nationwide and certainly here in the state of Arizona. But what I sense from my conversations with law enforcement agencies is the Preston Lord case has really impacted the approach that all police departments across the state are viewing these types of incidences. So I do think that it has made a course correction. I think it's heightened the seriousness of how the police deal with these situations. And our swarming legislation is meant to also accentuate how important it is for our law enforcement agencies to act. I mean, the fact that we are creating a special new crime on swarming should give notice to law enforcement agencies that we want cases investigated, taken seriously, and have the perpetrators brought to justice.
Correct me if I'm wrong, back in September when we first heard about swarming, it was 3 or more. I think now you said 2 or more. Can you talk about how you got from that point to now introducing this new legislation?
I believe it's 3 or more.
It's 2 accomplices.
Yes, 2 accomplices.
So 3.
Yes.
Can we also hear about the other bill a little bit more?
Sure. Representative Wenningard?
Yes, thank you, and thank you everyone for being here. This bill approaches, I was approached by Coalition of the East Valley Cities, Coalition of the East Valley Police Departments, and I was told, I didn't check on this, that the media kind of apparatus had been consulted on this as well, to basically say we're not going to have people who are being witnesses being intimidated and threatened and bullied, which happened in this case. And so there's that freedom for them to withhold that at that point. It's not going to affect testifying in court or anything. So these younger people and all witnesses are encouraged to come forward and not be intimidated and afraid. Thank you.
All right.
What kind of different? I mean, obviously, I recognize like classic felonies and much different than what we're talking about with the class for felonies. What kind of difference would this have made in the cases that you've seen in terms of sentencing?
Well, just to give you an example, the Class 6 felony, the presumptive sentence or the starting point for the judge is 1 year. The starting point or presumptive sentence in a Class 4 is 2.5 years. So that does make a significant difference, but also it makes a significant difference because as you work through that case, you could go to trial and get a conviction on a Class 6 felony, and it could be designated a misdemeanor. So the maximum sentence on a Class 1 misdemeanor, because they don't do presumptive sentences on misdemeanors, is 6 months in jail. So it makes a big difference.
If your prosecutors had this before, what would that have meant for these cases?
Well, if we had had this at the time, I think it would have helped us secure longer sentences in the cases that are peripheral cases to this to the Preston Lord case. And also, I mean, you can't ignore the deterrent effect of it being specifically called out in the law and punished more stringently.
To that deterrent effect, what would you say to those who consider breaking this law?
Well, I would say that they need to consider, number one, the mob mentality and gang mentality is so dangerous that when it goes overboard, you can take a life. Nobody can argue with that. You can take a life. And there are 7 young men who are now charged with first-degree murder. So that's the outside possibility. But the inside possibility is you can go to prison for a long time just for participating in this when a life is not taken. And that the state, the county attorney's office is going to take this very seriously, and you will be held accountable.
One last question. And this is obviously legislation is always reactive. Anything being done to be proactive to stop these types of incidents from happening in the future. And you think if this law was in place in October 2023, it would have prevented that trend?
Please.
You know, I can't go back and predict what would have happened. What I do know is that people who are engaged in criminal activity do pay attention to how law enforcement is responding to things. And I think when legislators gather to pass a law specific to this type of behavior, when law enforcement has revamped, as Representative Gress talked about, and that this has really informed how things are being conducted these days by these groups, I think they will pay attention to it, and I am very hopeful that it is a deterrent. You know, as a prosecutor, I love to not even get to the punishment part. I love to just deter the behavior so that there is no crime. But in the event that there is, they will be held accountable for it.
And I would say that there have been a lot of lessons learned in this, and I know that law enforcement agencies have had conversations on this very topic about how they can be more proactive. So we have legislation. I think we have a shift in attention from our law enforcement partners. And my hope is that moving forward, we don't see justice delayed as long as it had been delayed, both in terms of the investigation, certainly, and bringing all of these folks to justice. These tools given to law enforcement will help them act even more quickly. Thank you all for being here, and stay tuned. We'll see this bill as it moves through the process. The next step is it'll need to be heard in the Judiciary Committee, and so we're working with Representative Wynn to get that on the calendar. Thank you.